All right, welcome to Stampscapes Live. We're going to finish off this stamp sketch here. It feels like a little bit more than a stamp sketch here with the use of the white brilliance ink for that moon in there, but it just comes to show you that when you start off with these pre-printed papers like this vintage paper is, you don't really have to do a whole lot to it if you really don't want to, and still have a pretty complete looking finished piece if, you want to just do something very quickly. But in this video, I'll show you what I do to these pieces just to kind of finish them off a little bit more with some highlighting. I really like adding just some finishing touches in terms of kind of pushing the lighting scheme of the piece. So a few more highlights, shadow work, and just a little bit of sparkle to it sometime. Okay, so I'm adding in, I'm going to see how this works here. I don't know if this will look good or bad or what, but I cut out a little template in the shape of my new moons here, with the large one and the smaller one right here. So, and that's what I used for that Brilliance Ink Moonrise back there. But I'm going to see if I can stamp some additional texturing, kind of those craters that we see on the moon. And we'll see if that looks good or not. If it doesn't, then we can always just go over it again with some more Brilliance ink, okay? Or maybe this is stamping out too dark, but let me just see what this looks like here. So I stamped it off one because I don't want to have like a really strong feature on there. But I think that looks pretty good. I mean, that looks to me like a moon right there with the additional texturing on there. It kind of dims it out a little bit and adds a little bit of mood to it. I don't know, I like it both ways, but that to me says moon on there a little bit more. Hello, Linda. So just adding some little tweaks in here, Linda. We already kind of added it down there on Friday, but I figured I'd, finish that little statement there. So there's that little bit of moon texturing on there, just really kind of minimal. I guess I could have stamped it a little bit darker too, and then tapped over it again with a little bit more ink if I wanted it to, but it looks more dimensional to me now. All right, so white pastel pencil here with the Carbothello, and we'll just emphasize some of these little highlights on these trees that we started out, kind of adding a little bit to on Friday, just to give people kind of a little bit of a hint on, some different highlighting options here. And we'll take a look at that. I'm going to add a little bit more probably than what I think would be ideal, just for the fact that I can remove some if I want to. Okay, now that moon looks pretty dim back there, so I'm not going to give too strong of a reflected light feature on, my different objects in here. So we'll add in just I don't know. On some of these, it's more than a little tiny touch of this pastel, but I won't go too overboard with it. All right, so the trees on the right side of the scene are being left side illuminated right there. Okay, same with rocks for the most part. Some of my lighting's probably a little bit overhead too, because in reality this would be just completely silhouette probably. Okay, but this is artwork, so we want to kind of bring out certain objects a little bit more. So we're kind of referencing natural lighting, but then this is more like a stage production or something like that, where we're like a lighting director, and so people can see more things that we want them to see in that type of production or setting. Hello, Candy and Froggy Fresh. Good to see ya. What's new in the train world, Adelita? Hello, Megan. I didn't say Megan Els, unless you want us to. So just a real quick vid here. Um, I really wanted to get to some of the little detailed touches on this piece here, including I really wanted to see what that moon texturing would look like over that. But I didn't know how dark to make it or light. So I just did one impression with it right there with my moon. And I kind of wiped off the perimeter a little bit and just stamped it right on there. And I think it looks pretty good, you know. To me, it looks a little bit more dimensional, you know. A little bit different than just a straight orb. It did darken it out a little bit though, so it's not as bright, but I could go over it a little bit if I want to with a little bit of you know, more white pigment ink. But it's already really subtle, but I don't know. It might look good though. We can make it kind of glow a little bit more maybe. I don't know. All right, so on this side right here, it looks like a really soft application of this. I do have a little bit more of kind of trees on this one that are a little bit more definitive in terms of kind of showing the edge of it, and that's what I've highlighted right here with the pastel pencil. So, hello, Patty. We'll make this one quick. You got to get back to your moving. Actually, you know, let me think. I was thinking about putting some additional pigment ink over this, but why not just do it with the pastel pencil here? Soften that up a little bit, like this. I don't know if it's applying at all. It doesn't feel like it's applying too much over that Brilliance ink. Maybe a little bit, because that's a little bit darker than this side, huh? Yeah, a little bit of applies. Okay, so let's go a little bit more down here in the water. We kind of want to strengthen that kind of feature through there because the water on this piece of paper right here, well, that light area of this piece of paper, white against this right here, that color, there's not very much contrast. So let's go pretty harsh in that area, you know, to get a pretty full application of this white. So that just shows up on there a little bit more. Okay. Kind of have that kind of creep in between those trees like that. I think it looks pretty decent like that. We'll take that up there a little bit more. And I think that should be it with the pastel pencil. I had a little bit of lighting on this. Maybe we can add a little bit more. When you start adding it with this pastel pencil, each mark is pretty subtle, so you can get pretty like aggressive with this pencil. And then if you add too much, you can always remove some of it too and kind of balance it off a little bit more. All right, so that was that. That's the pastel pencil on there. And then, okay, now this should be spray sealed, okay, so that when I add my paint pen in there, I'm not kind of digging into this powder, basically, you know, from the pastel. And it's going up into this, you know, this acrylic paint pen, whatever nib feed there, but we'll just apply it right over the top of this and see how it goes. Yeah, it's fun, huh? With this this paper here, it does look reasonably natural in terms of the tones in there. I like the, you know, I mean, this is vintage paper, so it's supposed to look that way, but you know, I mean, it does give it that aged looking feel back there. I haven't really taken a real close look at this type of patterning on here before, but this almost looks like this kind of flame patterning going out this way too, like right up in here. I really like that patterning up there. It kind of looks like it's like a piece of paper that's been crumpled a little bit, you know what I mean? Maybe that's what it's supposed to look like. You know, it's kind of aged. There used to be this thing that we did with in photography class. I say we did. I don't know. Someone did it, and a lot of us started playing around with that too. But I think it might have been in some books too, or something where someone saw it. But you take a piece of printing paper. This is old days of dark rooms, and you take a piece of paper and then you kind of crumble it up a little bit, and then you expose it to light really fast, and then you develop it, and then you fold it out, and it's this flat version with all these shadows and highlights and things like that in the paper. And it looked like a crumpled up piece of paper, but it was flat just from the exposures that were, the different lighting exposure that it got from the different angles of the crumple. That was pretty fun to do. We were using our different papers in class, probably wasting some, but it was fun to do. Okay, so adding in some crisp highlights on the side of that. Do you see the difference between this one and this one right here? I can't zoom in anymore, so I think it's going to go out of my lens is going to go out of focus here. But adding that crisp little highlight on there adds the detail back into it. So we're going light over dark in a very super soft way with the pastel pencil. And then this is a way to go in and add that crispness back into it, okay? Or it just balances off that really soft application of light right in there. Now, if it's supposed to be like fog or something like that, I wouldn't like add a crisp little feature into something like fog or something. But where there's reflected light on objects, especially with detailed imagery, like these, it just kind of balances off that again. From a textural standpoint. So see these little dots in here? I mean, you see the difference between, here's the area right in here, without any of these little types of lighting features. So it just kind of brings things to life. And if you have a little, like a rock, sitting right here, you can see my hand here. Imagine this is like a rock, okay? And you can see these little areas right in here that are illuminated, okay? So we're shading the darker side and we're illuminating the top side. Now they're already like that in the designs themselves, okay? So, like here, this one is right here. So I bottom, added shadow in the top, but then you see that little line on the top of lightness. That's where I'm adding the pastel pencil. But then I want that a little bit more of a sharp line, so I'm adding a little dot or two up on top of it with the paint pen. Okay, by the way, so this is like a cream colored paint pen right here. Just, it adds a little bit more of a subtle highlight right in here than the white. But I'll add on a couple white ones too, just to emphasize something a little bit more. But these paint, pen sets these days are really kind of nice because you can play around with kind of a little bit more subtlety than we used to be able to just with just straight white, okay? All right, so adding some of those little details in on the left side objects. About like so. It kind of, you don't see this one as much because it's not as dark over here. I'll shade this though too, coming up here with the black Prismacolor. See that right in there? That kind of brought that area to life. See this tree right here? How it's in the darkness. I mean, I don't know if I should illuminate it. It's really kind of a darker area in there, but we put, well, a couple things on a couple of the lighter areas like that. It could kind of just bring it out just a touch like that. It makes it look a little bit more dimensional. It's like 3 dots on there. I don't know. It's more than that. But just a few little highlights on that side of the tree like that. Okay. Now see where this pine tree like this. I like the strong silhouettes like this, and a lot of times I add highlights to it, but I don't know, kind of in my older age, I'm adding less in that type of area. But see this tree right here, it gets lost right up here, right? Okay, now I don't want to highlight it all up here because that would be too, sometimes it's a little bit too strong, so I'll just kind of add a few down here in the lighter area, and then I'll maybe put a couple dots up there as it kind of trails up there, but it kind of brings it out a little bit. So it's like, oh, don't forget, you know, this area right here is part of the tree, so you just kind of put a little emphasis on the highlighting right in there. And it's, again, it's real subtle right here. See, that's the same thing on this tree right here. This really gets kind of, the tops of this tree goes up to about right here. So you can kind of emphasize, or, you know, via some lighting on maybe the lower areas down here that are in the light like that. I mean, you can add, you know, highlights all the way up top there. I would probably look for a slightly darker tinge. That looks like a little bit beige to me, but that's what always fools me. That's really gold. But if this was like a beige, darker beige color, I would probably put some of that like right up there where it's kind of a, you know, I don't have a good option for anything kind of in this same, I don't know, as I say that, here's this, no, that's gold again right there. So they don't have like a dark brown, so I'm missing that with these pen sets, you know. I'd probably have to get like a 80 color pen set as opposed to a 50 color pen set, because they always want these brighter, kind of funner tones in there, you know, the oranges and pinks and all that, you know, rather than like 5 shades of gray and brown, you know what I mean? People don't want that, just in, you know, the general public. Okay, so adding in some little bit of highlighting. Here's our little, I don't know if she's the star of the scene or if it's the moon, but putting a little bit of lighting on her blanket right here. I won't do too much there like that, but see that little emphasis right down there. If I didn't have the moon in here, I'd add more stars up in here, but I kind of like that as is, so I won't do any of that. Okay, so let's go in and illuminate some of these cabins now. Let's see how that goes. Hello, Cecile. Here's my little tiny features now, right here, with the cabins. I'm just going to add a little bit in here. With these pens here, you can kind of add a tiny little touch. So this is a 0.7 millimeter. So see that, the difference between those 2 windows, and I'll add in another one. There's another one right here on the side. And on the side of the house right here, if you want to. It's already kind of light, so it shows up a little bit, but let's bring it out a little bit more. Okay, so now we have interior lighting right in there. Now the interior lighting on this one's not going to stand out very much because it's already in kind of a lighter area of this paper right here. Okay, but let's do it anyway here. All right, I'm flipping this around like this so I have access to it without putting my hand over that pastel that's on there. That would come right off on my hand if I touched it. Okay, so let's do it like this. I might just do part of the window too, right here. I'll go like half of the window. I usually do the whole thing, but I think let's do like, I don't know, let's go just partial. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the moon that's reflecting off the water and it's reflecting up in the cabins. So maybe the cabins aren't interior lit, but it's just reflecting some of the light off the water. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I think on these new designs, there's a little bit more kind of window space. So it can represent different things. You can put like an uneven application. See, I just added a little bit more light to that one right there. But see this one right here, and there's windows over here that I didn't touch. And I just put a little bit, so it's a little bit more, a little bit less, and then nothing on this window right there. You don't have to overthink these. I'm doing it on this one right here because I've interior lit my lakeside cabin, the 147F, a gazillion times over the years. So I'm just kind of playing around with this, just to do something different for me. Okay, so there's the highlights with the pastel pencil right in here. Okay, and then let's do. So that's reflected light on there, but let's do those little sparkly little touches, highlights in here. Okay, now this one doesn't show up right here because this is like the lightest area of this paper. So it's about the same value as this. So let's switch off to a lighter value like that. So see this white here should show up a little bit more like right in there in that reflected area. And then maybe some of these trees that are kind of closest to the light source will be reflecting a little bit more light. So let's add some of this. I'm starting it right in. See, I start it right in an area where I can't even see it. Just so I can get a little bit of a feel of this medium when I'm adding it into a scene. That's usually my process. I start adding a new color value or something like that in an area where I can barely see it, just to kind of acclimate a little bit. And then I start moving it out into other areas where it shows up a little bit more. And that's with white, or if I'm adding a darker color in inks or anything like that. I kind of get my, I don't know, whatever your bearings first. All right, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see those little dots right in there? It's looking a little bit more shimmery, huh? And that's that lighting that everyone, it's like, it's shimmering light, it's dazzling, you know what I mean? It's moving, it's twinkling. That's the movement that you see kind of when you're looking out over a body of water. Even when the water's really still, it's all these little things like that are really kind of sparkly and in movement. So I think it's really fun to add this in here. If you haven't tried kind of little highlights like that with a paint pen, I would really recommend it. It really adds a kind of a nice dimension into our scenes. Like they're the smallest little things like that, but like on something like this right here, this case right here, it's these little highlights like that are on that, or on my pen right here. It's this line right here that really makes things dimensional. When people are painting, like in oil painting and they're doing portraits, one of my funnest thing to add in, it's like you do your whole painting, but then you get to white and it's adding that little sparkle like right in the eye. Okay. That was always people's like fun things to do, I think, I know it was for me. There's little tiny touches like that and I kind of bring things to life. All right, so there's my little shimmery twinkles down there. And it kind of added I don't know, I guess the most extreme contrast is going to be the this white pen on here, because there was no other white on here, well, except for the moon. Okay, but the moon's probably a little bit translucent too. It wasn't like, like this color of white. Okay, But you add all these little things on here, and it really kind of, I don't know, it's like kind of visually whatever dances on the page like that. It really kind of stands out nicely. And I would have used a lot more of it before, but now that I have this kind of lighter or darker pen that can add more subtle highlight, I'd probably use less of this on this type of paper at least. If I'm going with starting with a white piece of cardstock and I'm coloring myself and leaving more white, I would add more of this one. Okay. But see this tree right here? Here's this tree. Let me add on a couple little highlights like this in here. Okay, so see, that kind of brings it out a little bit more. It's slightly more dimensional. Okay. And like I said, you can add it or not. But it's one of those fun little subtle details that's pretty fun to do. Okay, so that was the lighting. Now let's add in some additional shading in here. This is just your black colored pencil. I use it very lightly for more for grayscale touches in here. And there's not a whole lot that I think I need to do. I don't have to do any of it. I think it looks fine as is, but let's just check it out and see how it looks. A paint set devoted to natural shades. Oh, okay, cool. Is that, now what do you mean by paint set, Linda? You mean like actual paints, or do you mean markers of a certain hue or a collection? I've already forgotten about the pastel pencil. Oh. And had it all over me and smudged it up. Well, the good thing about the pastel pencil is that you can reapply it if you want to. You can remove all of it if you want to. All right, so let's just anchor down this cabin here, night cabin. So this little kind of mark right around that edge, and I'm just kind of anchoring it down here. So if this is the edge of that, if this is a shoreline like that, what I'm trying to do is I'm adding a little bit at a time. So I'll kind of add a little bit of a kind of a mono value like that, okay? And then what you do is if you want to, then you can kind of emphasize it a little bit more, but transition it if you can, okay? So it's going from kind of a darker version, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter like that. So it's this mid-tones in here. Try to get a little bit of the transition tone in there between this color and this one. So the way you do that is you just go kind of apply the lighter version, but apply it kind of at the same pressure and amount like this. And then just go in and add a little bit more like that, okay? And that way you'll get a nice variation and it won't be this harsh kind of line from top to bottom like that, okay? So see, it kind of anchors it down a little bit more. Let's do the same thing right over here, okay? And just go real lightly, because if you apply like a 5% gray here, and like if you can't tell if you want to add it or not, just add like a 5% gray like that, okay? Now you might not even be able to see it, then just go a little bit darker, a little bit darker. Because chances are if you added something in at just such a gradual rate, you know, you can see if you're going to like something or not. And if you don't like it, then it's just barely visible. But then if you think, you know, it looks pretty good, it's making things look a little bit more, I don't know, maybe rounded, or the scene look, you know, the object look like it's anchored in there a little bit more, you know, maybe going a little bit darker right here brings more emphasis to the lighter areas, you know, stuff like that. You know, if you want to add more, you can. You could come in to see these little streaks right in here too, where you have that lighter streak going like that. And then you have these darker ones coming in here. It's not something that I applied, but I just kind of, separated some of these streaks. If you wanted to, you can even come into those darker areas with a pen like this. I don't think I want to, though, but you could if you want to emphasize those little, that lighting ripple on the water or something like that. All right, so I'm going to come in here and just like I've illuminated some of the tops of those rocks right in there. Okay, with the pastel pencil and pen. On the bottom side of it, I'll just add a little bit of so here's a rock, and I've added the highlighting up on this top area like that, okay? But on the bottom area, you can give a little bit of a additional shadow like that, and to make that look a little bit more rounded, so like this one right here. Or if you've added in too much kind of highlighting, you can kind of de-emphasize it with this. Right in here, it kind of gets a little bit murky with all that white pastel pencil, so I'll add a little definition back in here again. Or here's this cabin, and there's a little bit of shadow underneath it. I can kind of emphasize that a little bit more, like that. Let me see, this one right here didn't go, this image right here didn't go quite down to the base right here. I was just going to slice off like 1/8 of an inch in here, but maybe I'll just kind of extend these planks of wood out a little bit like that and put them in shadow a little bit more. And I'll just keep this, I won't trim off anything like that too. But I think this piece is done right here. The lighting is stronger now, I think, I'm drawn into here more, I think. I'm funneled in here a little bit more. So when I put that little texturing over the top of the moon, it dimmed the moon out, because this area right in here is a little bit more gray now. But I think adding these little shadows in here made that look a little bit lighter to me. I don't know. I think it did. And it wasn't like a whole lot that I did here either, so. Let's see. Oh, our little blanket right there. Okay, I'm just kind of playing around. I wouldn't. I'm just showing you areas that you could color in if you want to. Like here's her, she's right here, so if I want to, I can kind of create a little bit more darkness right behind her, like she's, there's a shadow being cast right back in here, so I can kind of add this little darker little area right here, she might be a little bit, shadow might be a little bit longer. I don't know. Like that right there. I don't know, it kind of puts her in the scene a little bit more, but yeah. So on this one, some it'll be matted off with my typical vintage paper combo of a little bit of white like that. Or I'll probably go with a cream colored paper, not the white one right here. The white one's a little bit too extreme right here, but, and then with the gold border like that, so it'll be this combination like that. I like this kind of the gold on there, because the gold, when you think about gold in terms of theory, we're thinking about like that gold, like that, but when you're looking at these pieces like that, just in general in normal lighting, the gold looks more like that. There's darks and lights, and it changes a little bit, so I think it gives kind of an elegant, whatever mounting to this type of paper right here. Or although you could keep it in theme too, you can keep it more aged looking, with going with a different type of border out here, something more muted, or I don't know if you had like a sepia colored paper or something like that, but I don't know. The gold is really cheap. And I have a lot of it now, so I typically use a lot of that one. Let's see here. We have glistening water there, huh, Megan? Doesn't that let, but don't these little, see those little dots in there? They're kind of subtle, right? You know, but it's right over the top. So what you were doing is you're just putting, you know, sharp or crisp over soft like that, okay? Now in here too, you know, I was thinking, and I already forgot about it, but I could take some white pigment ink and just, you know, kind of dab it around in here to create that little kind of misty, I don't know, whatever areas within the piece. But I think I'm going to leave this one as is. I really like the look of it, just as is. Maybe on this other one I'll add that, you know, some extra kind of mist or something like that, you know, that's kind of meandering around in here, right around in these waves or something like that. But yeah, I'm just going to hold on that right in there. So I don't know, kind of playing around with the whatever oscillation of within the lighting scheme, sharp against soft, so it's a textural thing that you can kind of play around with like that. But I really like those little white little dots. And I wasn't, you know, I didn't know if it would show up in there or not against this pencil, but I think it does enough. And then when I spray seal this again, you know, those pastel pencils, anytime you have pastel or chalks or something like that, where you have a lighter area against that's built up over a darker, spray it real lightly, because, you know, a lot of the lighter, whatever, powdery feature of chalks and pastels, it becomes more transparent. It moves towards transparency. If you spray this thickly enough, you'll lose like probably all of this if it, you know, soaks the pastel or, you know, these little whatever dust particles, you know, on there. So just light spray, you know, and hit it a couple times from distance, 12 inches or something like that. You know, just spray it, you know, do a quick pass over it. I do like quick bursts usually, and just to let it sit down like that. And then if I need to, I'll just, you know, I'll start locking it down just very lightly, and you just do it in between coats. The coats only have to, you know, dry like 5 seconds or something like that, especially if it's a spray fixative too. So it doesn't take a long time to do, but just don't slather it, you know. If you're using something like a light over dark, and that goes for pigment inks as well, white pigment inks, okay. But yeah, okay, so I really like this right here, you know. Boy, you know, there's a lot more opportunity with color. But when you do something like this and you know, all you have to do is just add some white and black, you know, basically, or whatever. I added some beige with that, but it's really hard to beat in terms of a fast project on there, you know, playing around with these types of papers like this. I really like the look of it, the whole kind of spirit of it. It has a little different spirit than, you know, colored pieces, because it looks like aged, right? And it's definitely warm, inherently warm, and it already has this inherent glow in there too. So it's a big head start for you know, making some sort of complete, you know, like visual statement in there. And it's a really good exercise in kind of playing around with you know, lighting, I guess, in scenes too. So highly recommended. A lot of you probably have other types of papers in your collection too, and it doesn't have to be these types. There's these pre-printed papers. Gosh, I don't. You know, like, okay, so like even like this one right here. I mean, this snowflake one right here. And I don't know if I want to do it on this one because it's like really super thin, but if I cut this off right here, okay, and, you know, this is like my horizon area right here. Maybe I'll try that. I don't know. I haven't used this one in a while, but on something like this, instead of using black inks like that, you can go with like a dark blue ink or something like that, and then work in blue scale. So, my highlights would be, something like, these two types of colors like this. You get into, a nice range of blue toned shadows and things like that. I probably wouldn't go, like I said, I mean, you could go black on this, but I'd probably keep it with a cool color scheme. And that would be kind of interesting. So a lot of different types of stationery out there for this type of exercise. Now on this one right here, though, too, I mean, like white against this isn't going to stand out very much. So, but, you can certainly do, like this type of scenario like this, where it doesn't have like a white against, barely blue right here where it's going to show up. But I don't know. I think it's worth kind of playing around with. And like I said, a lot of us have, different papers like that that might not even been thought about as stamping surfaces, scenic stamping types of surfaces. But, I think I don't know. I think they'd work out really good. Okay, let's see. Right about now, I'd love to be that. You're going to be that woman on the dock there up in Michigan. When you get up there, when you take a weekend drive over to the lake. Oh, acrylic markers. Okay. No bright colors. Well, that sounds like a good range, Linda. Have you used them yet? Are you writing sound effects? We'll have a scenic stamping retreat right here or something like that. I went to one in there was like 3 scenic stamping retreats, and we were meeting in Chicago for 2 or 3 of them, and then the person that organized all those, she just said, "Hey, I'm just gonna have it in my hometown." You know what I mean? And it was like, "Hey, that's fine with us. You're the one that's doing all the work." She provided all the stamps too, for everyone, and she had like every scenic scenic stamping design from every company. So we drove out to her place, but at one point in time on a Saturday, I think, people were stamping Friday and Friday night, and then Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. Then we just took a quick break for like, I don't know, like an hour or something, like, or 40 minutes, and drove over to this place. But there was this like, not a dock like this, but there was this lookout platform that overlooked, I forget that river. What's a river that runs through Illinois? But so it was like a scenic stamping retreat, and we took a little break to look over a really scenic area. It was pretty cool. And then we just went back to the whatever community center or wherever it was, and started stamping again. Pretty fun stuff. Yeah, the blues would be fun. I haven't done that for a while, so I need to do that. I need to do some scenes that are just... Sometimes I'd retain only the foreground areas for black imagery, just to really push depth. But maybe it would just be all blues, like on that, that paper. And I will try something like that sometimes. They have a really good look to them, and you can do that with any type of range of tones, like... brown tones are really fun for that too. Beige imagery like in the background, and then like a medium tone browns for the midground, and then really dark browns and black for the foreground, or black for the foreground, like right in here. And it really there's a certain mood to it too, because what it always represents is it's like looking through like fog at imagery where light is reflecting off something, and it's, by the time it gets to your eye, it's already been broken up so many times through whatever suspended moisture in the air, So they really have a really cool mood to them, working that way. We used to do that in my second class, where we would get a color scheme, and then we would stamp out those images in that color scheme. So like I said, so this is near imagery, a little bit farther, farther away, and farthest. So this might be, in this case, like say these trees right here might be in this Prussian blue or black. And then these images right here might be in this blue or this blue. And let's say there's a moon or some clouds in the background or something like that, or mountains, and they would be this color right here. And then you just tone all your scene in using those same colors, and that unifies them all. But it really pushes depth. So I would do that as my second, the first thing that I would do in my second class, Stampscapes 102 or whatever it was called. And people really love that exercise, because in the first class, what I would do is I would teach them just to, pick a color scheme and then break it down into values from light to dark. And that's how we would start coloring our scenes, and then they were able to utilize that coloring strategy for pushing depth, something that has nothing to do with this scene right here, but you got me thinking about it, All right, folks, just a quick tweak here on this piece right here. So I learned something new on this one. I haven't really stamped over, a pigment ink moon before, and I think that worked out pretty good. I like that little, detailing on there. It was kind of subtle. Like I said, if it came out a little bit too dark, I would just gone over it again with my little template like that. Let's say if that was all like really dark, and I would just tamp over it again a little bit with some white pigment ink and just get it whatever the illumination that I wanted in there, like that. Or in this case, I just, went over it a little bit more with the pastel pencil. It didn't really stick to it very well, but some of it transferred on there, so it was enough. That all right. Have a great night. Yeah, Patty, hope everything's going nice and smooth with all the packing and everything like that. And the Sharpie marker on the boxes type of thing. Always takes a lot of Sharpie markers writing down what room something goes in or what's in those boxes right there. Yes, but they are hard to get to show up on rocks and wood textures. Thought it was a good idea. Now, why isn't it not showing up? Are they too transparent, Linda, to show up? Let's see. I was thinking earlier, I had a question. You tried out the different inks and explained them. I was wondering how Stampin' Up! Ink is compared to Marvy ink. I'm sure it's a thicker ink. I'm not sure about the saturation of colors. And I'm not sure who made Stampin' Up! Inks. If it was Stuart Superior, then just about every other ink out there on the market. No, I'm not talking about every single color, okay? But just in general with Marvy inks are typically brighter. Let's say if you have a mid-tone blue or something like that. Like this is Memento, but it pretty much goes for just about every other pad out there. But see, this Memento Bahama Blue is really similar, looking, just from looking at the pad like that, to the Marvy one. But this Marvy one right here is probably, it's no less than double the brightness of the Memento, okay? I love the Mementos too. That's why I have a bunch of them. But these ones also, by viscosity, I don't know if it's twice as thick, but they're quite a bit thicker than the Marvy inks, okay? So the Marvy inks transfer easier onto, say, sealed cardstocks, or even matte cardstocks, that are going to be more absorbent. I can get more layering with the Marvy ones faster, because these ones, it's like you're building up kind of like a thicker gel. So that's going to be the same thing for Stampin' Up! Inks as well. The only inks I've seen from Stampin' Up! Or experience I've had with them, I tried out some of those little tiny square ones before, but I don't like working with those little types of squares because they don't hold enough ink in them. But I don't know. I would imagine they were probably made by Stuart Superior until Stampin' Up took over Clear Snap and it became Stampin' Up Holdings or Clear Snap Holdings or something like that. But I thought they bought them out. I assumed so that they would use Clear Snap to supply all of the Stampin' Up inks. But then, I don't know, Clear Snap went out of business, or Stampin' Up, the parent company, closed down Clear Snap. So I don't know. I have no idea who makes those inks. But there's one manufacturer out there that made a lot of the inks out there for a lot of different companies. You just order whatever colors you want, from them, and then they do all the packaging and like the cases for you. So, but Stuart Superior was one of the bigger ones. So they make a lot of different inks out there, both pigment and dyes. And I don't think Stampin' Up ever made their own, like was manufacturing their own inks. They could have been. They were big enough to do that, but I don't know. I never heard about them doing that. If anyone knows, let me know. Because that might be a different formula of ink out there. But yeah, but no, they're the same types of inks, but they're not the same in terms of some of the characteristics of it. Now anytime I'm using Marvy inks, you can utilize inks from other companies, okay? But if you're looking at some sort of scene that I've done using Marvy inks, especially if I've used predominantly Marvy inks, and you use some other brands of inks, oftentimes, like I said, it's just not going to be quite as bright, okay? It doesn't mean you have to have all Marvy inks. You can have like a range of Memento, Distress, Stampin' Up or something like that. And let's say if you're doing layering, you're layering your colors on top of one another, okay? With your dye-based inks. If you just insert one brighter ink into the mix, because dye-based inks are transparent, you can add that brightness into the mix, and you don't have to have a pad if you just had a re-inker for, like if it's in the blue range of tones, since we're talking about that one, if you add in one Marvy ink amongst, there could be 5 other brands of inks, that are layered on there, but if one of the layers is a really bright tone, it'll brighten up everything. So if you have your primary colors like yellow, like a pink and blue, those are kind of your primary printing inks, then you can slot those in, because you can use a blue within greens, you can use a blue within purples, because that's a component of those colors, or the yellow could be used in greens, it could be used in oranges, stuff like that. I'm saying that I don't know if those Marvy colors are out there anymore. They're sold out of a lot of the re-inkers, and you don't need the pad either. You can just get the re-inker in there. But there are a couple places that you can still get them. You can get them straight from the Uchida website, and what is that, One Stop something, where people are getting, Marco's Papers too. They have some re-inkers out there still. But like I said, you don't need a whole lot of them. There's like, I don't know, 5 colors that are really good. They're sold out of a lot of those though. Already. Not all of them, but the blue tones typically are really popular. But like a light green is probably still out there. I use that for my grasses all the time. It's overly bright, so I have to knock it down a little bit. But then like a pink or something like that would be good. And you can use that in all your red tone scenes, like for sunsets, where you'd want a big saturation. And then that light blue, I don't think the light blue is out there anymore anywhere, but the Caribbean blue 104 is probably still there. It's a little bit of a warmer blue, but it really gives a strong kind of that glowing, kind of look to it. Now I've used a lot of the other blues in this one, so this one's not quite as like super bright, but then I knocked this one down a little bit with black over the top of it. You can see that charcoaly black in there because I didn't want it so like hot, vibrant, okay? But I'd rather be able to control that and knock something down because you can't take a dull color and make it brighter, but you can take a bright color and you can make it any intensity scale all the way down to completely dull, like a pastel or something like that. So it's all it's nice to be able to start off with something to be able to hit those stronger brightness notes if you want to, and that's where the Marvies come in. There might be other bright colors within certain ranges, but if you compare things like side to side with most of them, the Marvies are just, I don't know, several percentages higher. I don't know if it's always double, but it might be like a half, 50% more to probably 100% more in terms of intensity. Unfortunately, they're, all their inks are, they're discontinuing all of them, including the 1600 series pens too. So there's just too many like cheaper brands out there these days. You can get a pack of probably 150 colors of dye-based markers for $50. I'm guessing, on Amazon or something like that, or Temu or whatever. But the quality of them is just not going to be the same. But if you can hook yourself up with a couple bottles of like Marvy inks, they'll last you a really long time. Maybe, I don't know, for the rest of your stamping careers. You don't have to use a lot of them. One that goes a really long way. All right, Stampin' Up's a lot harder to work with when blending. Oh, it's way too heavy in the pigment. Great for stamping, bad for blending. Yeah. So that's probably a lot of the cases out there with the different brands of inks. Stampin' Up dries really fast, even using the re-inker. That's interesting. I don't know if they have any kind of thing within their dye-based inks. I'd be curious to see what those would look like. Highly layered, okay? Because Stampin' Up, that's not one of those techniques that they would typically showcase, I don't think, in their samples. I'm trying to think of some of their catalogs that I've looked through. My wife used to be, whatever, a demonstrator. Everyone was demonstrators, right, for Stampin' Up at one point in time. But I don't know. I would take, if you want to do things with blending with those inks, always start off with the re-inker in a light tone. So if you can do something like this that has like a lot of layers of blending on here, really lay down a really strong saturation using, I don't have it here, but just, use a bottle of re-inker fluid on whatever you're applying it with, and then just layer it and saturate your paper with it. This is on glossy cardstock here too. So it's going to retain, the most amount of media on the surface, especially with a dye-based ink that has to work by staining, so it's penetrating, but you're getting a lot of surface retention of those colors on there to, be nice and bright. So use, try some of it, maybe in your first couple colors, just use your re-inker fluid, okay? And that if it's drying too fast, then you're going to be starting off with just so much of a wetter application of it, okay? And then if you have like all the Stampin' Up inks, they probably have, a full range of values of every hue. So, tan, you know, a little bit darker brown, whatever, medium tone brown, dark brown, light blue, medium blue, dark blues, stuff like that. Get something like that in the background going like that. Or a fun thing to do would be to do your, you know, your Northern Light type of thing, but really get a good saturation of it going, and then apply, you know, your inks over the top of that, or your imagery right over the top of it. But I don't know, try that out, you know, and see how it goes. But get a really good saturation down with those first tones. I haven't really, you know, come across too many inks that I don't like. Okay, I just like some inks in conjunction with some other ones. So that's why I usually incorporate the Marvy inks in with my scenes. Sometimes I just for you know, making a point of it, I just only use the Distress and Memento, because a lot of people don't have the Marvy inks. But if people want to go with those like deepest of saturations, I usually recommend at least, you know, 2 or 3 of those Marvy re-inkers, especially these days, because you know, once it's gone, it's gone. In terms of availability out there for sale, so get it while you can. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that, you know what I mean. Ideally, there'll be another company out there that can kind of replace those types of inks, but they're, you know, of all the companies I've ever seen out there, no one has. And it's because Marvy inks were already out there before the stamping industry. So a lot of the inks that have come about are, you know, they're made by like one company, like Superior makes it, and they're excellent inks. Like I like, you know, all inks, Distress and Memento, and things like that. But everyone was using Marvy inks at one point in time. This is all pre-ink pad. So we all used Marvy markers to color our stamps with before stamping them out. And so I just know that the intensity of those ones already, had I not known that and seen it and practiced, you know, stamped everything out with that for years, you know, I don't know if I would be really, I probably wouldn't miss it, but I would miss it now. Probably if I wasn't to use it on certain scenes. Okay, but that being said, if you use other brands of inks and things like that, and you can't achieve a really good brightness of it, okay, just spray seal it before your pieces dry, and that'll really, you know, retain the look of a freshly stamped kind of wet application of ink, which is typically brighter looking when it's wet. And that looks pretty good. You know, you can get pretty intense with that. When something's wet, it just looks darker too, right? So it looks a little bit more intense that way. So do that. Just always have a, you know, a can of sealant, your, you know, your Marvy, not Marvy, but Krylon Crystal Clear or the spray fixative. And, you know, that really takes care of a lot of things. That's one of those things I think everyone, you know, would probably benefit from, because it makes everything look brighter. So you know, it costs the same thing as like 2 pads or something like that. And you can get probably 100 cards done with 1 can, you know, as long as you're not like doing like a super thick slathering of it. All right, so let's see. I found it mixed well because they dried. They added the fast drying quality. Did they do that? Oh, now you used to demonstrate Stampin' Up, right, Linda? I do have pretty much every color re-inker and Stampin' Up. Use those re-inkers, Megan. You know, and I think you should be pretty good with that. But use more. The thing that people, when people first start doing like saturations like this type of technique, if I, you know, in my workshop, I always got them using the right amount, you know, but if they're working through a range of tones like this, okay, I'm not talking about just with Marvy, I'm talking about any pad, okay? If I have them starting off with a light blue, everyone colors with the first color, okay? And it totally makes sense. And they're going on with the second color once they get full coverage with the first color, okay? but it's not that. You use like of all these colors that are used on a scene like this, let's say in terms of the overall amount of color ink that I would use. Okay, this would use probably, okay, so there's 4 colors right here, let's say, and then black. So let's say there's 5 tones that I'm going to use to achieve something like this. I used a different color in there too with a greenish tinge, but just say for example, so on this color right here, I'd probably use like 50% of all the ink that's on here. I'd probably say I'd probably use like 60% of this, okay? Because that has to get like a pretty full coverage, but it also has to kind of moisten the surface and pulp at the paper a little bit, okay? So you apply like maybe the equivalent of, I don't know, what you're going to do with these, like 4 layers of this or something like that. Because that's going to saturate your paper. It kind of lubricates it, as one person told me years ago. She goes, oh, okay, you kind of lubricate the page with that first tone, then it's not just base layer. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what you're kind of doing. So this is like 50%, then you're using another 20% right here. That's what, 70, or maybe 25. So that's 75% of the ink that you're going to be using on here. And then these ones would be like 10%, then 5 and 5 or something. I don't know. Did that add up to 95 or whatever? Distribute the other amount on whatever that was. So just use a ton of that first, your lightest colors, okay? And then that should make the blending of those darker tones a little bit easier. Now, if it's like, I don't know, if things are like drying super fast, then I don't know, you know, maybe that can't be worked around if that's that within that formula of those Stampin' Up! Inks. Unless they changed it over the years too, I don't know, from those early ones. I probably saw some really early ones, and maybe they changed the formula or something like that. Maybe there's some kind of drying component in there, just like there is with Brilliance inks. Brilliance, these are water-based inks, and you know, dye-based inks are water-based too, but the Brilliance has some sort of faster drying component in there because they wanted these to dry on, you know, if you use it on glossy cardstock, it was supposed to dry on glossy cardstock. Like even if you're like stamping an image on the glossy cardstock, that's a very thick application of pigment ink on there with a very thick style of ink, you know, pigment ink. It's surface oriented, so it's so that's all that little light cloudy haze in there, which is very light application. But even if you stamp out your imagery like that, it's supposed to dry on non-porous papers like this one right here. So here's the foil right here, and the Brilliance dries on this just fine. So maybe they added something like that, whatever allows it to dry, into those dye-based inks. I don't know, God, you know, I don't know. That I can understand it, you know, in terms of stamping your imagery so it won't smear, but I don't know. That would I think if something like that was in there, it would make your pads dry out so much faster. I don't know, maybe buy more inks that way. I don't know. I'm not saying that's why they did it, but I don't know. Something like that makes me suspicious. All right, folks. Thanks for joining in. We're checking out this light shade, whatever, exercise. Application. Yeah, try that. Yeah, try the reinkers on there, and just see how it goes. So yeah, if you do it, try it on the if you have a semi-gloss or a glossy, try it on that. Don't try it on the glossy photo paper though. That'll dry like instantly. Try it on something a little bit more sealed off if you have it. All right, good night, everyone. I love my piece right here, in the mood with this. I don't know. Every time I do one of these pieces like this on these types of papers, I think, man, you know, I'm going to do this like all the time. Then I'll use the wood grain and say I'm going to use that all the time. Then, you know, the vinyl holographic printable sticker paper, then it's like I'm going to do everything on that from now on. So always fun stuff. All right, good night.